I'll do a quick DPS rotation for you. So, first things first, it's just forward barrage, flamethrower. I just put a turret down while I'm waiting. Forward barrage, MRL. Both nukes. Forward barrage before they land, so you get to max gauge. Q, and then EW or WE depending on stagger. So we'll just do this. You'll notice that with gale winds, you don't lose your adrenaline. Come out, both nukes again while you still have gauge, and then I just MRL. And that's the rotation. You wait for your gauge to go down. And once the gauge is all the way down, you start again. This one we won't have MRL, so we're gonna have to wait a second. But what we can do instead is just drop the ult. You want to make sure you ult whenever you're full gauge, and you want to use the ult secondary activation when you have full gauge, because you have Spec, so it's scaling it like a ton. But yeah, it's the general rotation. I might be a little late to the nukes here. You want to sometimes if your gems are low, I have 7s. The higher level cooldown gems you have, the more leeway you're gonna have on that nuke timing there, essentially. Also, you could do forward barrage here, but I like to put down both nukes first and then use the forward barrage, because it gives you a little more time on the back end to fit both those nukes in again. It's a little bit smoother than if I just push the gauge and then I use the nukes, because then after you push the gauge, you're kind of missing out on the time. So I can do it the other way, because look how much time I have left even after I used all the stuff. And then that like adds in a little buffer for like boss patterns and shit. But if I was going to do this where let me see. I'm gonna wait for the turret to fill the gauge a little bit before I do this. If I was gonna do this where I FB'd first for full gauge and then use the nukes and then went into turret, you'll notice that like I've already lost a ton of the gauge. And on Spec Swift, it is possible to get all the stuff you need in, but it's still kind of tight. So like if you have to reposition it all, and I'm even waiting on the cooldown here, right? So I might miss like part of the MRL here. I just barely got the nukes in, and I missed like part of the MRL. So it's a little tight if you don't snapshot essentially, or not snapshot, but update the nukes damage by pushing the gauge to max. So how it works is this is level 1, this part right here. This is level 2, this part right here. And then level 3 is when you actually have the max gauge. The damage and the crit, you don't have any crit because you don't have FP, but the damage and the crit scale based on the meter. So if I were to like hit a nuke right now, 0 gauge, 2.5 mil non-crit. Let me see if I can get a crit. 2 mil non-crit. 2 mil. Like I'll just keep throwing nukes down, and we can watch the damage go up. So 3 mil at gauge 2, 3.3 gauge 2, 3.3, or that was gauge 1. So gauge 2 it's doing 4, right? 10 mil crits. And then now that my gauge, that was a 9 mil crit. And now that my gauge is full, it's gonna start actually doing damage. Right, so. Even non-crits are like 4.7, right? But with how the firepower gauge currently works, your crit rate also goes up. You're not going to have a firepower gauge, but even the damage is going to be better, right? Even if you don't get that crit rate. Another note on the rotation, when you use the turret, the most ideal way to do it, you don't want to use it to fill the gauge first. I'm just using it to... So the ideal way to do it is wait for this orbital strike, see the ground thing, and then reactivate V. Because it'll animation cancel that turret ability, and it'll come out with the blast right after. Whereas if you don't cancel it, I'm gonna wait for it to do it. It'll like get itself stuck in animation for a long time, and the next attack will be slow. So another note is forward barrage. Some people put actually we'll talk about flamethrower first. If you think you're gonna miss it, you can cancel it early and get the cooldown back, even if you hit a couple times, right? So like, if you can get a couple ticks and then like cancel if the boss is gonna move. However, if you hold like a second too long, you're gonna lose the whole cooldown. So it's a little bit sus if you miss this, because it's like half your gauge essentially. For forward barrage, when you use the dancing flame tripod, you don't want to do shit like this where it only hits once, because if you look at the meter gain on it with the one hit, it's like barely anything. The point of taking this tripod, where is it at? point of taking this tripod is to hit with all of them, so you get 2 ticks of the meter gen, which normally requires you to be like right up on the boss. So you notice it hits once middle, then 1 on each side, and if you look at the gauge, it does 2 ticks of the gauge gen. So it does essentially like twice as much gauge gen if you're like hugging the boss. You can't really be too far away, because even if you're like slight distance, you notice I only got 2 ticks there instead of 3, right? So you need to be like literally like in the fucking boss to get all 3 ticks there. I don't even know if there's anything else I want to talk about. I think that's it. I'll go through this stuff real quick. I put Gale Wind here, but realistically you can put Purify on as well. This doesn't need a Gale Wind because all it does is increase the speed that you drop this initial one. It doesn't increase the speed that the actual nuke lands. Normally I don't even put Purify on Energy Field. If I put Purify, I just put it on Summon Turret because it gives you 2 charges to potentially Purify. But yeah, I personally do Wealth on Flamethrower because I'm more used to the class, and I don't really miss Flamethrower anymore. So I'll tab through what I have though. These 2 are important tripods on the nuke. These 2 are important tripods on the nuke. For you, Lightning Barrage might be better, just because you don't have FPE, but you'd have to do the math on that. I put the Synergy on the turret. These 3 are after the nukes. I think it's these 2 as a priority over this one. This is your most important one probably, just because you use it more often than the Flamethrower. So this is probably your most important tripod. And oh, I have Firepower Concentration on right now. This is for GVG and GVE. This is your second most important one. Some people take shields here. It's definitely better just to take range flame. It lets you hit Flamethrower in scenarios where you wouldn't be able to. But yeah. Oh yeah, gems. I don't use Flamethrower cooldown, right? If you notice during my rotation, I had Flamethrower up when I needed it anyway. So like, if I did a quick rotation. Kind of scuffed it because I didn't put a turret down, but it's fine. If I did a quick rotation, you'll notice by the time I'm done with my barrage, I'm going to have Flamethrower up anyway. So there's literally 0 diff currently at least. Right? So this shit's already off cooldown. Even if I had a Flamethrower cooldown gem, doesn't fucking matter. Also, the damage on this fucking skill, when you have 0 gauge, is fucking abysmal. Like, less than 1 mil damage, right? Because you're using it as a gauge builder and you have no gauge, so you have no damage. Versus putting it on this turret, which is going to do way more than 1 mil over the lifespan of its damage, right? Two ticks of this. Yeah, it's incomparable. So my turret's doing 4 mil on the same gauge, so like 4 times as much damage. So I just put the cooldown on this skill. And then forward barrage, I just do because if it minimizes a little bit of the downtime you have here while you wait for it to come back up while you're doing your rotation. So this is just a preference thing, though. Realistically, this doesn't make like a huge difference, but it's something, I guess. Maybe you can test with like swing, but I don't even have quick prep maxed, so on this ability.